Welcome to Next in Queue, the podcast for contact center and customer experience professionals. Next in Queue is brought to you by Happy 2 Vision. Eliminate blind spots and see right through every conversation with Happy 2 Vision. Learn more at ajppitu.com. Now, here's your host, Rob Dwyer.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Next in Queue. My name is Rob Dwyer, and joining me today, we are reaching well across the pond because I am being joined by Bogdan Surdea-Blaga from Romania. Welcome. How are you?
Hi, Rob. Hi, everyone. I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you.
Now, we have to talk right out of the gate about your background. I get a lot of comments on my background, but we need to talk about your cork board, pin board behind you. So tell me about the nature of this board behind you.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you have small kids and you have a lot of Lego pieces in the house, you start wondering, what can I make? How can I make the best use of them? So I'm a fan of pin boards, as I call them, right? So stuff to hang, quotes, pictures, whatever. So my idea was to build one out of Legos, boards and pieces and so on. So it kind of developed in through the last month. Actually, I started beginning of this year the project. So I even have, I'm not sure if you see it there, is like the consultant's metrics 2x2. It's just that it's about life. So, but it turns out that you can pretty much build anything out of Lego pieces. So yeah, I'm not the one to tell you because I see what you have in your bag. So, yeah.
Well, I love that you've taken something, a lot of the stuff that I have behind me are models, right, that someone else has designed, right? And so yeah. I built it. And what you've done, and this is, I think, the magic of Lego, is you've taken all of these pieces and created something entirely different for yourself and something that's useful, that you can enjoy. And so I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
It's not just a kid's toy, everyone. It's not just a kid's toy.
And probably, as some of my friends are telling me, we are buying the kids or the pieces for, assumingly for our kids, but actually it's for us to build them together. So yeah, probably that's closer to the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get started. Tell me where you grew up. Have you always lived where you live today?
Not right here. So now I'm based in Cluj, which is, if I say the heart of Transylvania, I think it's easier for people. We don't really have vampires, so we are safe. But yeah, I grew pretty much close by, and I came in the current city to study. And since we like to think it's the second largest city in Romania nowadays, but definitely one of the most developed. So it's a place where you can find a job, you can meet the love of your life and everything else. And it's pretty amazing. And that's why I stayed here.
Is this where you met the love of your life?
Yes.
Yeah. So how long have you been together?
As I like to think about it, soon it will be more years together than apart. So, but we are not quite there. So we have another 5 years to go. So we've met we married in 2005.
Wow. Well, congratulations. That's quite some time.
Yeah.
So you went to school for computer engineering. What was the plan then? So when you were in college, where did you see yourself in 10 years? What did you plan on doing?
I mean, even before college, if I think about it, I started working or toying around rather with some sort of computers, because it was not really a computer. It was more like a keyboard, a video or a tape recorder where you would load your games, and just a normal TV. But that was in my 5th grade. And I always thought I will be like a computer engineer, or a computer programmer rather than engineer. So this is what I did in high school. This is what I did in college. It's just that was the vision, right? Or, the long-term plan. The only thing is that I realized that, maybe too much of a thing you like is not is not good for you. It's like, I like to think about it like eating chocolate. So yeah, chocolate is nice, but too much chocolate maybe is not good for you. So as years passed, and as I was going through college, I realized that the utility, the perceived utility of this was not something I would do long term. So then, in nowadays terms, I pivoted to something else, and I said I will become a manager, and whatever that means, really, because I don't think anyone has a good definition of it. But this is what I said I will do. At some point, I thought going and studying like economics or like business administration and so on. But my mother, and God bless her, that she said, you started the college, just graduated, and you'll see what you'll do later. In the end, it's not like you need to really do that. So I took her advice again. Thanks to her, graduated, and then I started all sorts of jobs actually.
So what was the first job that you had out of college?
Yeah, I mean, in Romania, we like to say the first official job because we all do all sorts of work, which is, we are not normally employed, but through college, I build websites, all sorts of computer programs and so on. But the first job was in a DIY retail chain in Romania, like Home Depot, definitely smaller, but it was like a German company entering Romania. They had a mega store, a superstore in the capital city in Bucharest, and they were opening the second one in Cluj, in my hometown by then. So they said, okay, it's not like we need engineers or computer programmers or anything else, but you still have a good chance to learn a lot about opening a business or starting up a business, working with all sorts of suppliers because you needed to place orders, make sure the stock levels are always on time and so on. And they did have an internal CRM, which was quite ancient by then, but I got to understand it quite okay. So that was the first job, the first real job, let's say.
Yeah. So were you doing any kind of customer facing roles, or were you doing
Yes.
more of the back office analyst, or both?
It was all I mean, everyone was customer facing in the shop, right? So even the computers, which we would use to place orders and so on, were on the floor in the shopping area, right? So because you needed to help customers if needed. But that was somehow I realized that was probably one of the big lessons I had to learn, and I didn't do it in the past, because if you are in front of a PC screen, or more PC screens, but anyhow alone, you don't really understand how to interact with customers, and the customers are the ones which really have the power, or should have the power, because they are buying or willing to give you some money.
Yeah.
So that was a good lesson, actually, quite early in my career.
Yeah, I also studied computer science, and I also thought I'm going to just write code, and I really enjoy, right, creating those solutions. But similarly, I decided maybe that's not quite for me. And one of the things that I really love about where I ended up is that interaction with people, but it does take some practice, particularly when you're trying to execute something on their behalf or looking up something, and making sure that you're still interacting with them to create a great experience is, I think, a lesson that a lot of people first learn in retail. Like that's where a lot of people first get that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you have some expectation of predictability when you write some software, right? Because you say, okay, if I key in a certain set of instructions, I will always get the same output. It's not always true, but in general, it happens, right? While with people, it's not like there is a recipe on how to deal with them, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. You're absolutely right. You can execute the same set of instructions, but with a different person, the outcome can be very, very different based on a lot of variables that we're not necessarily privy to.
Yep.
So after that, what came next for you?
I mean, I would say I had a number of jobs, all important, but I wouldn't go through the entire history because it's I'm not so young anymore. So there has been a number of jobs, but I would stop to a point in which I entered the BPO industry, the business process outsourcing, because
Mhm.
Romania became a part of NATO end of 2004, beginning of 2005. We were on track to become part of the European Union. So somehow a lot of companies in this services sector, IT and business services in general, discovered that there is a country here, not small, I mean, not small by European standards. So like 20 million people. So again, small by any US standard, but still decent in our terms. With a quite okay educated workforce, and especially important, we were able to speak foreign languages. Foreign languages more like the Western European, German, French, English, of course, Italian, Spanish. So this is how a lot of centers started up because these companies came here, and the company I'm talking about was Genpact. It's US based, but quite a good heritage because it used to be an internal unit of General Electric based in India. Then they realized, hey, we are quite okay in doing all sorts of finance and accounting, procurement, all sorts of these services for us for different GE units. So why don't we offer it to the bigger world? So this is how they started and work with pretty much any customer. And in 2005, they came to Bucharest, and 2 years later, they wanted to expand in inclusion. This is how I came into contact. I know I was working for a bank back then, and my wife was saying, "You are crazy." I mean, banks were seen like the coolest jobs, all days in suits, good pay, and so on. And I was actually going as a team lead to a company which had no employees in Cluj. There were employees in Romania, but not in Cluj. And even slightly smaller salary initially because I said, I'm willing to give up part of my salary because I think this is the future. And I'm right now looking back, it's always easy when you look back,
Yeah.
but would be nicer to be able to read the future, but we are not there yet. But looking back, it was the right decision because from that point on, and really the culmination was Sykes Romania or Sykes Enterprises, which was a US company, and I got there really because of my BPO experience, and I came to run the Romania operations, one site, then more sites, and so on. So yeah, I think I took the right decision back then.
So we'll talk a little bit in the near future here about RebelDot, but it seems like you had a little bit of rebelliousness in you even then, right? To give up what was probably seemed like a very stable banking job and go into a business that you didn't know with a company that was really in a startup phase, even though it may not have been a startup company, right? It's in a startup phase and you're building things from scratch. What was, like, if you look back just on that experience, what was the biggest lesson you took like early on in really getting started with Genpact?
I mean, in the end, there is no replacement or no surrogate for hard work, really. So because yes, I didn't know finance and accounting in general. I was working in a bank, but it was more like analysis, like a lot of more like spreadsheets and data modeling rather than understanding economics or finance and accounting. But then because I really wanted to understand the processes my teams would deliver, I really went with them through the training, being able to build what we would call the SOPs, so the standard operating procedures. And that brought to me first of all, a lot of work, but second of all, a lot of respect from the clients because they felt like I'm really looking into understanding their business and I care about their business more than, yes, I'm the manager and my team will do your work and everything will be okay. So that was really, really important if I look back now.
Yeah, that's very insightful. Put in the work and learn the business. That
Yeah,
makes a huge difference.
yeah.
So with Sykes, and I think a lot of people who listen to this show probably have heard of Sykes. Now it's part of Cytel. You were there for a really long time in a couple of stints,
Yeah.
and you really kind of grew your career pretty substantially there. But where did you start when you came in with Sykes?
Yeah, and you understand the business, right? I mean, that's definitely one thing we have. I mean, not one because we have the studies, but also you being part of Concentrics, you see how how
Yeah.
the industry works, right? So also in this type of industries, it's really dynamic. And yes, I came in as what we would call account manager, so which is really an ops manager because a new account was implemented in Romania, and I can say the name now because it's unfortunately not longer existing, but it was Yahoo, so the web
Yeah.
portal, beautiful brand. I think Romania was one of their bases anyhow of a large number of customers. The support was not for Romania itself. Romania was part of it, but definitely it was the rest of Europe, the bigger
Hmm.
countries. But this is how I came in as an account manager to implement the process, the project, and so on. And I applied the same in the end, the same recipe. I really wanted to understand what we are expected to deliver, how we can do better, how we can continuously improve what we do. And I think that shows really, or it showed, and also my colleagues saw, because afterwards I got the job of a site manager, as we called it, meaning we had back then only two projects, but the other one was significantly larger. But as we grew and as time passed, we implemented more and more projects in Romania. So this is how and opened more sites in different cities and so on. So when I left, it was a team of 2,000 people, and quite a
Wow.
sizable operation. Again, I need to be mindful that I'm talking about our region, and 2,000 people means nothing to
A
US
lot.
standard, but still was for us was important.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm wondering, and this is something that we see on a very small scale in the US, but it's typically two or three, and that's the languages, right? So in the US, often we'll have a Spanish contingent. We may have French if we're also servicing customers in Canada, for instance. But in Europe, right, things are very different from a language breadth perspective. What's the biggest challenge in managing being able to handle all of these different languages for your customers?
I wouldn't say the language or managing the people or the languages once you have the workforce, but getting the workforce, so really recruitment or attracting the talents, that was the most important thing for us, for me. So even as a country director, if I look back, probably on a daily basis, I would talk to my recruitment manager. Of course, different people reported into me, a lot of ops people. I would have regular meetings with them, but they would not be on a daily basis, right? So recruitment was the one task I would keep an eye on a daily basis, and not in the bad sense, but we always needed to come up with new ideas, new places to recruit, in the end, new employee value proposition, because we understand, and as well as I do, that is not the dream job, in the sense that if you don't really grow in the company, at some point you might need to move forward to another industry, another company, just because the level of pay is at some point kept, because that's how the
Hmm.
industry works. Um, but what we tried to convey to the people was, yes, we understand that for some of you, probably most of you, will be just an entry-level job. But if you do it properly and you learn all the soft skills, mainly, because the hard skills, yes, you can find them, but the soft skills part of it, you will be successful in any industry, in any job, in any company. And those companies will be willing to pay a premium for your skills. And again, not the hard skills, not the fact that you know to log in or type in very fast, but the fact that you know how to speak to a client, you know, to deal with pretty much any situation. And if you're able to leave, or you know, after every interaction with you, people to feel better than how they started, maybe they're still angry, but you know, slightly less angry, that's a really something people would pay for you to bring into their companies.
Yeah.
So, and I think this is, if I look to how many people from Sykes Romania, and Sykes in general, but now I'm talking about Sykes Romania, went to all sorts of good jobs, better paid, and so on. I think we did a good job. It was just a matter of people having a little bit of patience, because I don't think like 6 months in a job is enough time to really understand. Yes, you get to scratch the surface a little bit, but it's not like you're really mastering all these interactions. And when I say interactions, of course, a lot of them were phone calls and so on, but not only, all sorts of channels like chat, email, social media. So you get to be savvy or digitally savvy in a lot of channels and types of interactions.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, speaking of that, right? So you spent really the last decade in the BPO industry, and that was a time of pretty significant change from
Yeah.
a technology standpoint and from a channel standpoint. What was the most exciting thing that you saw or got to implement as that whole ecosystem was evolving?
I'll tell you one which made me excited, and also one which really, it was a big promise but never materialized actually. So, but in terms of the biggest shift, this is what and at some point omni-channel was more like a buzzword, but if I look deeper, the fact that there was a channel for each preference, each customer preference was beautiful. So even brands which would traditionally say, look, if you want something from us, you need to call us, they opened more and more channels, and they were open to interact with people on social media, any social media, basically WhatsApp, you know, all sorts of platforms. So as a client or as a customer or a user, you would have a chance, if I like WhatsApp or Signal, I'll go via that channel. And let's say the strategies implemented well were the ones in which you didn't need to switch the channel, because that was the key, right? I mean, if you would have all these channels only as an entry point, that's one thing, not bad, but still, if at some point through the process you would say, yeah, now we really need to verify your identity, so please call us. That was, I mean, channel switching was like, no, you know, you don't do that. So, but again, I think the fact that more and more channels, because when I started, basically phone was like 95% inbound, right? So we did less of outbound, more like follow-ups and so on, but inbound was 95%. If I look back now, phones, depending on, there were programs with which had no phone unless you really wanted, but you know, most people, because the type of customer was not channel loving, not phone loving. So, you know, they started balancing out all channels.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? I mean, I think sometimes we put the cart before the horse when it comes to technology, and there certainly was a time when this, and maybe we're still in this time, because I still see it occasionally, this rush to open up channels without really having the full breadth of the platform backing behind it to make sure that I can really service all of your needs within this particular channel. And if I need to switch, make that a seamless experience, because often that if that switch is really kind of clunky and it's like, okay, well, we need to stop this, and you're just going to have to start over here. And that's just not a great experience for anyone.
True. I mean, I had a colleague, and he was brilliant in saying, like, because the term of the day was always effortless, right? And Bo, he said, man, if the guy or the person has to call us or send us an email or whatever. That's not effortless. That's already effort put in to contact you. You can definitely make it frictionless, or with as little friction as possible. And yes, that can make a difference, but effortless is more like doesn't exist, because you still need to put some effort in, right? But yeah, I mean, I want to say actually not one, but two things which didn't materialize as I and my colleagues would expect. And one is self-service, because at some point it was all like, yes, we will move to self-service. I was thinking even the other day, like, why didn't self-service catch? So, I mean, why wasn't it successful? Because in the end, who better than the user, him or herself, knows better what's expected? But I really think the downside there was that the technology was not where it should be, because you cannot say, yes, self-service, but only tasks 1, 2, 3, and for the rest you need to contact us, so that's where. And along the same lines are the chatbots. Let's call them chatbots, can be any sort of bot, which for the same reasons that you cannot really implement the full service, I didn't feel they got the right adoption, let's call it, or the expected adoption.
Yeah.
But a lot of technologies don't, are maybe not mature enough, and later on you realize that, yeah, actually that's the future. So I wouldn't rule them out, but I think before implementing either self-service or some sort of bot automation, you need to be prepared to offer the full, or at least the main type of contacts or issues people would contact you for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very, very important and very insightful. And I think you're right. The technology sometimes, again, we rush into it before it's not quite mature there. I remember my first smartphone ran Windows 2000, I think, and it was a little flip phone, and it worked on 3G, which was really, really slow, and it just wasn't quite ready for prime time. I liked things about it, but it was really not the experience that one would consider a smartphone experience. And I actually went back to non-smartphones after that. And really, it wasn't until, kind of the mid 2000s when the iPhone and Android came out that things really started to change in that ecosystem. So yeah, very interesting.
On the other hand, I think there is also a lesson here, because I would say the chance, it didn't feel like a chance, but for a short while, because we used to have a Nokia factory, like a mobile phone factory next to Cluj. And at some point it was still outsourcing. So also another client facing role for me, but I was running the site for the logistics partner, the partner which was doing basically inbound logistics and the warehousing, because the production was just in time, and we would get orders to ship the spare parts to the production lines. It was not, I mean, I stayed less than a year there, because by the time I started really enjoying it, the company got sold, Microsoft acquired it, a lot of factories were closed. But the lesson here, to your point, is yes, there was a technology coming out. They didn't really believe in that, right? In the factory, at least with the people I was talking, they didn't feel like touch screens will be the future. Who would give up, the normal keyboard and stuff like this? And yeah, we know how the story ends for them, right? So probably dismiss a little bit, but still keep an eye on what might come in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like we're certainly looking at the possibility. I mean, I see all of what is going on with crypto and NFTs, and I really think we're at kind of the initial surge there was probably over exuberant, and people are doing things that may not last. But that doesn't mean necessarily that the underlying technology doesn't have applicability once we really figure out, like, what's the best way to use this. I don't know that we're there yet, but it might be coming soon. And it's just a matter of paying attention to how we can find the best use and then really see things take off.
Yeah, and we would love, I mean, even, and probably if I think about my current job at RebelDot, we have a team which is doing like blockchain development. And especially nowadays, because for some reasons, the projects seem to be influenced by the price of Bitcoin, which makes no sense because, as you say, that the underlying technology is still sound and valid. But somehow, people see, they get scared, and we don't really have as many projects as we would expect at this point. On the other hand, we still invest in that teams and we keep bring on people in the team because we feel like, yes, we and the market didn't quite figure what's the best use of this technology, but that's definitely not something to throw away and, just say it's another fad and, move away. So yes, yeah, I mean, I think until we figure it out, we'll keep investing. And yeah, one day we might just say, it was a bad investment because it happens. But I don't think, and none of my colleagues feel that this will not be actually something big in the future. It's just a matter of finding the right utility, I would say. Yeah.
So today, you're the Chief Digital Experience Officer at RebelDot. So you've been there not quite a year, and this comes on the heels of being with Sykes for a really long time. What led you to RebelDot and to make that change? And because this is a little bit different of a role for you.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, the job title is too fancy, really. It is. I mean, first of all, because we are not that type of company. So I was joking when I joined that probably the best job title would be a rebel wannabe. Then I just felt that some of the clients might feel like, who the hell is this guy? So I said, okay, let's pick something which, tells a little bit more about my corporate background, but for the rest of it, we are really a first of all, non-pyramidal type of company. And second of all, we don't take us so seriously to call us fancy titles. It's a very nice company, to be honest. I mean, of course, one of the reasons I decided to leave Sykes in general was because it got acquired by Sitel. And not because Sitel or any other company, but, acquisitions are complicated. And it's really 1 year and 9 days, which tells you a lot how I keep track. Since the initial announcement, it was a Friday, our CEO, Chuck Sykes, said some sort of all company meeting, but the invite was 1 hour before, and we said, okay, something big is going to happen. We had all sorts of scenarios, like he will say he steps down, or he brings someone else, all sorts of scenarios, but none of them was like the company will get sold. And I remember one of the first things I told my team is you cannot say much, right? Because the information is scarce. You have this is what we can say, especially being a publicly listed company. We cannot share too much because there are certain rules, and obviously makes sense. And I found a book which is Emotions in Mergers and Acquisitions. And I said, guys, if you want to read it, because I have a copy, and let's look at it and understand that the next period will be really interesting until the transaction eventually closes and even afterwards. And it was complicated. The transaction closed the end of August, so beginning of September. And then I realized that, look, it's not something I see myself doing or going forward, because obviously the acquiring company had certain expectations, and if they are not aligned, they are not aligned. In the end, we are still mature people, and we can say, okay, let's shake hands, and each goes his own path. Yeah, so I think acquisitions or mergers and acquisitions have a complication, because especially imagine the resulting company was 155,000 people worldwide. So each of those people have some sort of emotions, right? And the closer you are probably to the decision centers and more you see, there are bigger chances that you don't really feel like, this is how we work up until now. And Sykes was a brilliant company in the sense that our CEO, Chuck Sykes, always said, look, we have this federated model. It's like US. So yes, obviously there are certain rules, regulations like the federal level, but then each state, and in our case, each country needs to run the business considering the local particularities and the way you feel it's best in the end for the shareholders to run the business. And that was beautiful, right? I mean, it was no top-down approach. No, of course, you still had a budget, you need to deliver, but a lot of autonomy was in this job. And I didn't feel this will be the case going forward, and that's why I joined. But I knew RebelDot. I knew Tudor, the founder of RebelDot. I met him a couple of times before, and I liked what he managed to do, because it was some sort of, the company grew very fast from like 20, 30 people, then 70, then 150, and then probably this year we will be, if everything goes according to the plan, 250. So it's not something you do only by chance, right? Of course, chance is always important, but you still need to be able to deliver value to the clients which are willing to pay you. So this is what they did, and this is how they grew. And I felt with my corporate background, I can help, first of all, structure a little bit some of the things which were more in startup mode, but more importantly, using my customer focus to really expand the lines of business, in the sense that not only to build, like do the initial assessment of the software and build the UX UI interface and the product, but also help with the post-launch. Because there is one thing which is happening in Romania, the salaries are going up, so we become more and more expensive. Again, not to the US standards, but compared to what we used to be a couple of years ago. And the more we feel, the more you can deliver in a project, the overall cost and the value to the client goes up. Because if you're a startup and you come to us for the MVP, that's fine. But what if we don't stop when we give you the keys, so to speak, the password to the Git repository where the software stands? But what if we help you launch it, help you a little bit, especially with the we were talking social media, but besides social media, there is a lot of activity in the stores, in the like Apple Store, in the App Store, sorry, in the Play Store and so on, because you launch an app, people start downloading it, and at some point you realize, oh, my rating is 3.6. What happened? But did you reply to those 10 initial people which said, hey, your app doesn't work with my Android operating system? And it's nothing to do with your app, but since you don't manage, because you have so many things in your mind, so we want to be able to really help them, and in this case, guard this. We call it being the guardian of the application reputation, but that's really important. And of course, we will never be another Sykes or another big company. So when they get the traction, they would need to go to the companies doing this. But for the initial launch, I think it's really, really important to be there for them.
Yeah,
so
and
that's the context. Sorry for speaking too much.
No, don't ever apologize for talking about what you're passionate about. I love that. This is something that I've run into a lot, right? Where a company is, they think they're ready to outsource, but they're not really, right? They don't have the scale yet. And it seems like a really great value add for you guys to kind of bridge that gap so that they've got some additional support. And you mentioned, right, and I think we're all feeling this, it doesn't matter where we live at this point, right? Inflation is hitting everywhere and everything. And so if you can mitigate that by really offering something unexpected, that helps you stand out in a potentially a crowded field. So that's really fantastic.
And we also noticed something for existing projects in which there is like a bug, but it's not really a a software bug, but something related to how the app interacts or the web app interacts with, especially we have, for example, a parking app and, all sorts of hardware in the market. So you cannot really test on all of them, right? And if you start using developers to fix, because yeah, you can isolate one issue and then you fix it, but that's not really highly technical. So you can also do it with some sort of level 3 in our previous world type of naming, but that's definitely less expensive than a developer, which probably would be happy to wake up in the midnight during the night, but still you need to pay developer rates, not level 3
Yeah.
rates. So all these things add up, and yeah, I think it can really make RebelDot a different type of company. We feel we are different in many ways, but this is another way we would like to be different by delivering more than the typical company.
Yeah, very interesting. So one of the things I wanted to just touch on in the time that we have left is, for those that aren't really strong on their European geography, you're in northwestern Romania, but
Yep.
the northeastern part of the country shares a border with Ukraine. And I think we all know kind of what's happening over there. What, if any, impact has that had on business?
Mhm.
And certainly as a company where like you're at this new company and things are um, going on there, have you seen an impact there? And kind of what's the general feeling in Romania?
I mean, it was like with any situation, there are good things and bad things. And the bad things, I think we all understand, are the humanitarian crisis which is happening, right? Because even thinking how it would be to, not getting hurt, but having to run in an air
Mhm.
shelter, whatever, during the night, I don't think it's comfortable, not even thinking about it, right? So that's something which we saw as it started. And a lot of Ukrainian refugees entered Romania through the northern part. Of course, a lot of them went to other countries, especially Poland and so on. So the stories they would bring are not nice, right? So not an expert, I'm doing all the disclaimers now. Whatever I'm saying is my personal opinion and so on. But you wouldn't expect in this time and in this era to not be able to resolve a crisis, no matter what sort, through talking and negotiation, right? So that's still striking us like, how can it be that it cannot be solved, whatever that is, right? So in that sense, the humanitarian crisis is bad. A lot of companies, including ours, I think did immensely right by donating money, all sorts of equipment needed, equipment like civilian equipment, of course,
Mhm.
for the border parts, for the refugees as they were coming, sheltering people, giving them a lot of friends which run Airbnbs and all sorts of small businesses are letting, if you are from Ukraine, you stay here for free, unlimited and stuff like this. So that was, in a sense, it was a good test of solidarity with the country. On the business side, we got more leads, I have to admit, because a lot of companies, especially the ones which were not from this area and didn't know what's going on, started looking for other options, or at least a backup option, let's say.
Mhm.
Because it's interesting now, as time passes, people are getting more and more used to what's going on, and the number of leads or potential leads related to Ukraine has decreased because people are feeling it's not that bad. And
Mhm.
probably is not that. I think people there really tried to keep up the work, and I don't know how they did it, but it looks like they keep delivering projects. And I guess they have an issue, or some software companies from Ukraine reached out even to us saying, hey, we would have developers available. So I guess the inflow of new projects is lower, right? And
Mhm.
once you concluded the project there, probably you would look for another option if you are, let's say, from Western Europe or US. But for the rest of it, I think it's still a pity if I look back that we got here, and it's still a pity that it's going on.
Yeah.
It's less on TV. I don't know. It's a funny thing that um, as the news broke and as the conflict started, I started informing especially our US clients about what's going on, and the fact that Romania is part of NATO, and we have backup procedures in place should anything happen. And they always thanked me in the sense that great that you are telling us that there is a sense of normality, because what we see here on TV is like it's the end of the world, which is not the case, right? I reached out, for example, to all my connections on LinkedIn, which are from Ukraine, offering to help if they need it. I mean, guys technically couldn't leave the country because they were bound to go to army, but families and so on. And a lot of them said, no, we manage here, so we are not in the tough conflict areas, so we will manage staying here. So it's still not normal, I think, but since we see less and less on TV, I don't know what's the real status now.
Yeah. I think the same is true here, right? Our attention spans are shorter and shorter, and there's always other news, right? And what was big months ago, maybe a little bit not as much in the forefront, particularly when it's not in your front yard or backyard, right? And it's certainly not in our backyard because we're so far removed from it. So I feel like we don't hear nearly as much about it as we did many months ago. But that's a very interesting perspective, and thank you for sharing.
I got a chance just to say this because one of my other passions is data privacy, and just because we had GDPR coming into Europe in 2018, and a lot of our clients were wondering what the hell it is, and I did some trainings and I come to love it. And actually the World Privacy Summit is taking place in DC each year in April, and since I didn't travel a lot with COVID and everything else, I said I'm going. Any chance to go somewhere would be really nice. But the summit is brilliant. I mean, for example, one of the keynote speakers was Tim Cook. So that level of attendance, right? And people from all over the world. But since it was in DC, and I felt like, politics is on every street corner there. And I asked a lot of people, how do you see the conflict and so on? And indeed, it was a lot of what I would see on TV the evening before. This is what they would relate. And there was even some sort of protest or awareness meeting outside the White House, but with like 20, 30 people with Ukrainian flags. So not a huge movement that's going like this. So I really felt indeed the distance makes it a little bit difficult to feel what's really, really going on.
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does. Well, Bogdan, it's been a pleasure having you on the show and learning about you and your journey and about RebelDot. I know our time is short, so I really appreciate you joining me today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rob. I mean, really, it's unexpected. I told you on LinkedIn that it's unexpected that you would have me. But next in queue sounds really really cool, even from an IT perspective, from a computer science perspective, because we would do all sorts of queues, list, stack, heaps, right? So yeah. Queue is a key structure for computer scientists. Yeah.